What's up, everyone, and welcome to Sunnydale Live. I thought I'd try this again. So I originally did this as a podcast with Ashley and Lawrence, where we kind of just talked about the episodes and review, and we didn't get really far. One kind of fell apart. And then I tried as a radio play, which I'm eventually going to go back to because I really loved the idea of the radio play, but I just don't have the time for it right now. But I thought I'd go back to just doing kind of a review show. Not in depth, not like dissecting each episode, but just kind of talking about what I like about it, what I enjoy about it. Because Buffy, it's my favorite show. Discovering that show when I did and how I did really changed the trajectory of my life. It got me to be... Before that, I never really thought about being a writer or wanting to create art. I mean, well, I like to draw, but beyond that, I never really thought of being an artist or being a writer, definitely. And that show really inspired me to want to tell stories and to express myself in that way. And so Buffy means more to me than just about any other form of entertainment. The show resonates with me on so many different levels. So I thought, why not do something where I just watch an episode and talk about it, enjoy it, and just kind of love on it. Not like deep dive or anything like that, but just kind of watch the episodes and talk about it and enjoy about it. Talk about what I loved about this episode or what I didn't like or different things that I take away from it or kind of just gush on it a little bit, you know? I thought that would be fun. I'm thinking about doing it daily, every day, just talk about a different episode. So I thought I would start where it all started, with the movie. I know it's not canon, it's not really, part of that story. Although, interestingly enough, if you do love the show like I do, that's, where your fandom comes from. But you also kind of like the movie, and you're like, I wish that it fit better. There's a comic book series, I believe it's only 3 issues, it's called Buffy Origin. And, it retells the story of the movie closer to what Whedon had originally envisioned and ties in a lot more with the show. The lore in the comics in that series is the same lore as the show. Vampires don't fly. Merrick isn't immortal. Like all that stuff that the movie does, the show did differently. I mean, the comic book, I'm sorry. The comic book did differently to fit in more with the show. So it very much is... and even ends, I believe, with the gym catching on fire, which the movie does not, tying into Buffy season 1, where she's like, I lit my gym on fire, that's why I got expelled. So that ties into that better, and it really it's what you want. It's the missing piece of Buffy lore if you're a fan of the show but you want to know about her LA years. And then there's a sequel where her and Pike go to Las Vegas. I believe it's called Viva Las Buffy or whatever. Angel goes too, although Buffy and Angel never interact because, of course, the first meeting is in the show. But it's really fun. It's the movie fitting into that universe. So it's a better connection than the movie is. But they're really fun stories. And they're definitely worth a read if you can get your hands on them. I've never seen the original issues, but I got them on trade paperback. So I'm sure you can find those pretty much anywhere. And they're worth reading. They're good stories. They're interesting. And like I said, it ties into the show. But the movie doesn't really fit. The lore is all different. The high school doesn't burn down at the end. The tone, like tonally, like the comic tone for Origin is very much in line with the show. It's a horror comic book that is funny. Like it's humorous elements, but it's not a comedy. The movie's very much a comedy. But it does have a great cast. You got like Christy Swanson, Luke Perry, Donald Sutherland. You even have like Seth Green in a small throwaway role, Ben Affleck in a small throwaway role. Every time I see Ben Affleck in this, I was just like, oh shit, is that Ben Affleck? I always forget he's in this movie. I think he has like one line, if that. He just plays a random basketball player. He's so young in it too, so it's like when he was just starting out. But it's just so random seeing him in there. But a lot of good actors, but this movie's very much a parody, kind of satire. The only person who seems to really be taking the role seriously is kind of Donald Sutherland, who's trying to play it straight while everyone else is being kind of like ridiculously goofy, which is cool, but it's also at times at times is a little too much. Like it kind of takes you out of it. Like when Paul Pee Wee Herman when he dies, his death scene is so over the top, and then they come back to it after the credits, and it's like it's funny, but it's kind of like the movie didn't know what it was because parts of the movie was played serious, and then parts of the movie was played like a broad comedy, and I don't feel like the movie ever really finds the balance between those two. Parts of this movie was trying to be like Dracula, like old school Dracula, like serious, taken at face value for what it is, and then parts of it was trying to be like Evil Dead, like let's go as Evil Dead 2, like let's go as over the top as we can, and it never really finds the balance that it's supposed to have. And I do think at times it hurts the movie, but there are parts of the movie that I think are really good, like the movie starts off with Buffy as this typical valley girl, and she lives for her friends and her boyfriend, and she cares so much what everyone else thinks, and she doesn't mind really being objectified. She's just kind of like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. And then as it goes on, she starts to mature and grow up and stand up for herself, and you see really quickly her outgrow her friends and her boyfriend and kind of step into herself and be her own person, and that growth is gradual, and you kind of love it. Like it is really well done. And then when Merrick dies, um you see her backslide, and Pike kind of pull her back to the new version of herself that she started to build. That character development and storyline of just like her evolution as a person is brilliant, and I think that part is where the movie really shines. Um, but then there are other things that I don't think landed right. Um, Merrick feeling like Buffy is special and different than all the Slayers who came before. Um, Sorry, the glare on the glasses. Um, it doesn't really land. Like on the show, when Giles says stuff like that, you get that because they have a bond, they have a relationship. He's seen Buffy and he's grown with her. Merrick doesn't. He's known her for like a week, a couple weeks, and she's complained a lot in the early. Like, what exactly is he? You never buy their chemistry. You buy Pike's and Buffy's, especially after she starts to grow and evolve, and Pike kind of loses everything and goes from wanting to just run, which is a sensible thing to do, to wanting to stay and fight and help her. And you see that chemistry, you see that growth of those characters and their relationship, and that makes sense. You buy it. You can buy into that premise because it's grounded in reality. But Merrick's and Buffy's relationship, that connection, I don't think I ever really bought. Maybe I'm alone in that. If you disagree, let me know. But it never felt real to me. It always felt like something that was kind of forced. That we were meant to feel, but they never really earned it. If that makes sense. I do think it's kind of interesting, the notion that Buffy has to keep her identity secret, not from other people, but from vampires, because if they find out, they'll all just come for her. I do think that's an interesting thing. Whereas on the show, obviously, Buffy's kind of famous with vampires. They all know who she is. Most of them are afraid of her. But this one, it's just like Buffy can take one vampire, but taking on a few at a time, that's too much for her. They really, and I can't say they weakened her because this came first, but it's really interesting to see the changes that were made from the movie to the show. I do have to love when the gym fight goes and Buffy goes outside to fight the vampires, and there's like, maybe 10 of them, and they all just stand around her and she fights them one at a time. At no point did the vampires go, let's rush her. They all fought her one at a time, which is such a weird choice. And it's just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no reason, especially since the whole movie you keep building up, if the vampires know who you are, they'll all come for you at once. And here's an option. Here's a point in the movie where the vampires all know who you are. They're all right there, and instead of coming at you, they're like taking turns. I don't get it. It was weird. Um, the main villain, was it Lothos, was kind of cool. He was kind of a badass. The fact that it seems like he goes out of his way just to hunt Slayers, and he even lets Buffy live. He's was it Kakarot? He's like, she's not ready. She's not strong enough opponent, so I'm gonna let her live and come back and kill her later. Um, he does kill Merrick though, who the like the we'll get to the Watchers in a second, but he is kind of an interesting character. This dude who just hunts Slayers and kills them, and it's kind of like this vampire king. It's interesting. Like the show, I think could have done a character like that. I mean, you kind of had the Master, who was an old school king vampire. You had Kakistos, who was hunting Faith. But I think a character like this would have been interesting on the show. Just a strong vampire who got his rocks off hunting vampire slayers. Spike killed slayers, but he never was hunting slayers. He just ran across a few and killed them. So it'd be an interesting thing that the show could have done that I thought would have been cool. But let's talk about the lore that is different. So on the show, obviously, Watchers is an organization that watches the Slayers, train the Slayers, and kind of from the shadows keeps the supernatural world at bay. But in the movie, the Watcher is like a single guy who's immortal. Or is he immortal or not? Because I've lived many lifetimes, so that implies that he dies and then is reincarnated and just keeps finding the Slayer and helping train the Slayer. Which is also then like, where's he been since Buffy's been called? Like he's just been looking for her, couldn't find her. I mean, I guess he kind of says that, but like, is this like? It's no longer a job; it's now a calling for him as well. You think he'd be better at it after centuries and centuries of doing it? Um, I just that's a weird twist to lore. Vampires flying. I'm kind of glad they got rid of. A lot of things that I think the show did better. The vampires can appear human and then change. I thought was much better concept than the vampires having weird ears and constantly having fangs. I do love though that I guess Whedon has this thing about overly friendly principals trying too hard because as I was watching this, the principal just kept reminding me of Principal Flutie, like the first principal from season one. It's the same over the top, nice, going out of his way to be kind. And I do love that when the gym fight happens and all the dead vampires, he just starts handing out detention slips to the dead vampires. No one's freaking out that there's a bunch of dead bodies with wooden stakes through their hearts. He's not freaked out by that at all. No, instead he's handing them detention slips. What? Why? You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes the movie goes a little too much into the obscure. Not into the obscure, to the absurd. It goes a little too much into the absurd. Like something like that could work on a scary movie or something like that because the whole movie is absurd. But you can't. This movie kept jumping back and forth from themes, like from genres, from concepts. Let's be a serious kind of horror-esque movie. Let's be a broad comedy. And there are plenty of horror movies that are funny that stay in the horror realm. I mean, the Hatchet movies all kind of funny, but are horror movies. And that's what this, I think, would have been better served as. And I think that's kind of what Whedon had in mind because the show is very much that. It's a horror movie that is funny. I mean, it's a horror show, but it's funny. And I think that's what he was going for. And I think the director was trying too hard to be humorous. And it definitely makes, I feel, the movie suffer a little bit. But again, that's just my opinion. And I enjoy the movie. I'm not trying to bash the movie. It's not what it could have been better. There's things that they could have and should have done better. I did like Luke and Benny's relationship, their friendship. And before Benny gets turned into a vampire, I definitely feel like they're way more likable than Buffy and her Valley girlfriends. Which I guess is maybe the part. You know, you get sympathetic with him real quick, whereas Buffy, you have to watch her grow and evolve and learn. The scene where Merrick discovers Buffy and he's just watching her work out and then is like, come with me to a graveyard is so kind of creepy and weird. Like this old dude just shows up and watches this high school girl work out before asking her to come with him to a cemetery. You gotta wonder about the choices made. I was like, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. It was very weird. I know a lot of people like Joyce from the show. And I've always, I know it's probably controversial, I've always thought she was a horrible mother. But compared to Buffy's parents on this movie, she is a brilliant parent. Buffy's parents in this movie are so bad. They just don't give a fuck about her at all. Like, she comes home at 10:30 and like, do you know what time it is? And like, oh, Buffy's getting in trouble. And she's like, 10:30. And the mother's like, ah, my watch is off. And then just walks away. And it's like, wait, hold on. Your daughter's coming home this late and you just don't care. You don't even really notice. It's kind of sad. And it's a kind of a reoccurring thing that Buffy just wants to feel accepted. Pike tells her, you're extraordinary. You're not like other girls. And she's like, yeah, yeah. And when it's like, that's all she wants is just to be normal, just to be accepted. It really... There's parts of this movie that are kind of brilliant. And I think the going out of its way to be a comedy took away from that. Because if you're going to be a comedy, then just be a comedy. Once Bitten, brilliantly funny vampire comedy. But it committed to being a comedy. This one never committed fully, I feel, to comedy or horror and was trying to do both at the same time. It felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen and there was too many different voices competing for authority in this film. And I don't mean like the actors, I mean like behind the scenes is how you could feel it. Because parts of it just feel like two different films. But overall, I mean it's fun, it's enjoyable. I do think that if it wasn't for the show, I don't think this movie would really be in conversation as much as it is. I think the show saved this movie. Although I say that, and yet I love My Best Friend's a Vampire, and no one ever talks about that film. Which is insane, because that movie's brilliant. But that's a movie that deals with vampires and comedy, and it works. It succeeds. The comedy in this movie is a little too broad. I think that's the problem. It's a little too broad for a movie that wasn't a broad comedy. I don't know. I guess that's just my take on it, watching it. I've watched this movie a bunch, but I've never like sat there and actually like paid attention to the movie and analyzed it. And this is the first time I kind of was like, well, let me actually like analyze this movie. And I came apart with like, there are a lot of things I have issue with. There are parts of it that I understand what they were going for. I just don't think they nailed it. It's kind of like the Martha scene from Batman v Superman. On paper, it's a brilliant scene, and I get it. But the movie didn't land it. Like, I didn't feel it from the movie. And that's kind of a lot of the concepts of this film. Is like, I understand the concept. I understand what they're going for. But I don't feel like it landed. And when it doesn't land, it kind of takes away from everything else. But I do think it's worth watching, especially if you're a fan of Buffy. It's worth to see, where it all started and see the original. And the cast is pretty incredible, and they're all really committed. Like, nobody in this movie's bad. I just feel like this movie was trying to serve too many different masters. I don't think that's the fault of the cast at all. I think they did a brilliant job, and it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't before. But yeah, so tomorrow I will start in on the show itself from the beginning. And this is Sunnydale Live. Till next time, I'm Jonathan. Give us legends.